All right, so you guys already know what this video is about because this is part two of signing in with email and password in our Xcode project and connecting that through Firebase authentication. So in the last video, we set up our authentication platform. We enabled signing in with email and password. And in this video, we're going to look at the additional functions that we need to fully support signing in with email and password. So these are things like if the user forgot their password or forgot their email, you can send a password reset email. And so that's what we're going to look at in this video. I will again note that if we're using something like sign in with Google instead of signing in with email and password, Google is then going to handle their Google account. So if they forget their password, it's going to be through Google that they have to reset it. So one of the benefits to not using email and password is that we don't have to manage the email and the password ourselves. Now, of course, most apps probably want this option, but it's something to think about as the developer. If you can get away with just Google and Apple and maybe not the manual version, maybe that's better, maybe not. But either way, we should learn it. Code's not that hard, as you guys are going to see in this video, and let's jump into it.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are ready to move. We are ready to groove. We set up a little sample project here. Got a little bit of tiny bit of architecture in here, a little MVVM for you guys, and some bad architecture with singletons, but we'll discuss that later. Anyway, we signed in one user to our app in the last video. We signed them in and then we signed them out. And now we can't sign them back in because we already have an account and we can't create two users in our authentication with the same email. So what we really need is another function. Now, I do realize it says sign in, but really it was a sign up. There's a bunch of ways to handle this. Some apps will have a sign up, and then below it might be like already have an account, sign in. We could do that, but I don't want to waste time because this is just a bootcamp. So what we're going to do is just take our same sign in flow. And if the sign up function fails, we're then going to try to sign them in and see if that works. So we'll have a fallback method of signing into an existing account. It's up to you if that's a good or bad idea in your app. I'm indifferent. All right. So a bunch of things we need to do here to get this set up. The first thing is when we do sign back into our app here, we're going to want to dismiss this screen after signing in. And that means we want to bind to this value. I will note that we could just dismiss the view. So inside the authentication and the sign up view, we could just dismiss the view, and that would dismiss the environment, which is this full screen cover, and we'd be back here. But generally when I'm building larger apps, dismiss view could be different depending on where it is in your app. And I'd rather be explicit on what we are doing. We want to really set this back equal to false when we dismiss this view, right? Because that's what we're binding to. So let's pass a binding of this into authentication view. So you're going to create a @binding var show some view of type bool. And then we're again going to bind into the email view with, let's say, @binding var of type bool. All right. So now when we call sign in, let's get our success or failure back into the view here. So instead of creating this task, let's actually just go like this, and we'll make this function asynchronous and throws. So if we are successful, it's not going to throw an error. If it is failure, it's going to throw an error. So we actually don't need this do catch here. We can just do this, and the do catch will be on our view. All right, so we can actually get rid of this. All right, so we have our sign in function. Let this compile real quick. Let's try to run it. I guess we need to fix this real quick. All right, so this will be a task, try await, and we need our do catch here, do catch. Let's configure our bindings. So the preview here, let's make this a constant of false, true, doesn't really matter. We copy that, come to this preview, same thing. Let's run this, get other errors that we're going to have, and we need to bind to everything. So show sign in view, we're going to bind to the show sign in view, and then In the root view, we want to bind to the show sign in view as well. I have a warning here. I just want to point out real quick. This is a Swift warning that is saying basically after we create this user, we are getting this data back. We're not doing anything with it. And that's fine because we don't really need to do anything with it. So to make this warning go away, we can always just add an underscore here, which just tells the compiler we know there's a value, but we're not going to use it. And that's fine. So if we want to make sure that we know that there's a value coming back, we can leave this. But in Swift, you can also go to that function and mark it as an @discardable result. Discardable result, meaning we know there is a result, a return value coming from here, but we might not always use it. So it's okay if we want to discard it. So now I have this and I can just write my code like this and it was discarded. Compiler's not complaining. We're good to go. All right. Lastly, if we do sign in and it is successful, meaning it does not throw an error, we're just going to set show sign in view to false because we did sign in. Let's build and run this real quick. Go to our simulator. And just to make sure that flow works, I'm going to sign into a different account that I've not signed into yet. So sign in with email. I'm going to say hello2@testing.com and enter in your password, sign in. And if it's successful, we're back in our settings. And again, I'm going to log out and we are back. I'm going to sign in. And again, if we try to sign into the same account that already has and that already is authenticated, it is not going to work. We should get that error printing out to the console. So let's print out an error here. All right. Again, if I look at my console now, I can see that there are 2 users, each with a distinct ID, and we can see their emails, nice and convenient. All right, so now we need a function to sign in if you are already a user. So very simple, actually. We're going to go back to the auth manager and just create a user. We're going to create another function called signInUser. So we're going to sign them in with email and password. It's also going to be asynchronous because it hits the server. It can throw an error and it's going to return us the same. And it's going to return us the same data type here. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it here. This, let's say let auth data results, set it equal to try await auth.signIn. Looking for the asynchronous function with email and password. Email and password. Here we go. Hold the option button and click return to get the full completion. We'll pass in our email. We'll pass in our password. And just like we did up here, we're going to return the auth data result model just like that. Again, we can make this a discardable result. Let's jump back to our code. And so let's try to create this user here. And if that fails, let's try to sign them in. So here we have a task. And first we're going to do this. So let's create another function here. I'm just going to copy and paste this. This one will be sign up and this one will be sign in. Same logic, same validation logic. The only difference here is going to be sign in user. And let's come down here. So first let's try to sign up the user. And if that fails, so if this is successful, we're going to dismiss the view right here and we can return out of this function. So if this hits the return, we're never going to get down here. But if this does not hit the return, we're going to get down here. And then we're going to do another do catch for sign in. And we're going to try to sign them in. So again, if they sign in, then we're going to also go back into the app. Again, a lot of times these are going to be separate buttons. I'm just going to make it one button just to keep things simple for now and moving along. So let's print. So let's run this. Cool. I'm going to sign in. I'm going to use the same email that I already used, hello2@testing.com. Sign in. And you'll notice that we got to print out this email address is already used by another account. That was the error on the first function. And then we had a success on the second function. I do want to point out, so now when we sign back in, the user ID did not change. So this user ID was created on first authentication, and it does not change throughout the user's lifespan. So they're always going to have this unique ID. And that's really important because we're going to use this ID to know where their user profile is in our database, to know which user it is when we look at crashes, when we look at analytics. So these user ID becomes really important. All right, we have the ability to sign in, sign out, log out, and let's run through a couple other functions quick. If you are signing in with email and password, you also want to be able to let the user reset their password. So let's go to our settings screen, settings view. I'm going to create another button and let's say reset password, and let's create another function here. Let's start with the authentication manager. And just FYI, I'm trying to keep these videos short because I know there's so much to cover and a lot of this is boring, at least this setup, but their documentation on authentication and all the other docs are really good. So if we look at password authentication here, it's telling us everything that we did already. So create a user and then sign in the user. And these are just using the completion handlers. We're using Swift concurrency, async await. And then there's a sign out user, which we did already. And if I look in the manage user section here, there is a little bit of data on, we can let them update their email, change their email, which we'll get to in a second, send email verification. So if we want a 2-step email verification, there's some documentation on how to do that. It's not very difficult. I'm not going to do it. We can change the user's password and we can send a password reset email. This is what we're going to start with right now. So come back to my app, func reset password. And let's see what we need here. We'll say auth dot send password will reset. We're looking for the asynchronous ones and looks like we just need an email. So let's pass in email of type string. We will try await and pass in email. And this is asynchronous and throws as well. And then if it doesn't throw an error, it is successful. Reset. Go back to our sign in settings view rather. We're going to create a func reset password. So we're going to need to call authentication manager share.resetPassword. So that means this needs to be an asynchronous function that throws, and we will try await to do that. We don't have the user's email. So in your app, you might want to add logic to load the user's email into the view model before calling this function. What we're going to do is just load the authenticated user and then reset password. Let auth user equals authentication manager shared get current authenticated user. We'll say guard let email equals auth user dot email. So make sure we get their email. If we don't have an email, we can throw from this function. We'll call URL error. Let's just say maybe, I don't know, file does not exist. You should create custom errors in your actual app, not these URL errors. And then we're going to pass in the email down here. We will have to try to get this. I'm getting sloppy here, guys. Guard let email else. There we go. All right. We got a reset password function. Let's come down here. Same thing, view model dot reset password. And if it is true, we should probably show some alert on the screen. I'm just going to print out password reset. Let's run. Try await, get rid of this error. Let's run this, build it to the log out, reset password. And it looks like it says password reset. I don't know why I typed that. All right, password reset successfully. Now, I'm not going to show you guys the email because the email I signed in with hello@testing2.com is a fake email. I do not have access to that. Probably should have used my own email when doing this. What I can show you though is the templates. So the password reset is a template email that's going to go out to the user when they get this. And it's going to say, you reset your password for app name. Hello. This is a link to reset your password. And then they'll click the link. It'll go to a web browser where they can reset their password. This is awesome because we don't have to deal with the logic for resetting the password and changing that. Google's going to do that for us. And when they reset their password, what's great is it's not going to change their authentication. So they might change their password, but we're going to have the same user ID regardless of that, which is perfect for us. You can edit these if you want. Honestly, it's a low priority kind of thing. So I usually just leave these as they are for a while. If you have your own domain, you can customize the email address that it's coming from. We're just going to keep it simple for now. And then the only thing to point out here is the display name and the app name. So if I click learn more, it's going to tell me what these are. So the recipient's display name, and then the public facing name is your app name. So it says it's on the settings page. So I'm going to come to my settings page, which is up here, project settings. And we have down here, public facing name. And now it looks like project. So obviously that's not a good name. We should change this to something that the user's actually going to see. This should probably be the same name that your app is called. So I'm just going to put Swiftful Firebase Bootcamp. That should be your actual app name. And then now that's going to be automatically included in the template here. Awesome. What else do we need to do? We want users to be able to, that was reset password. We might want to have a user be able to update their password on the app instead of sending them a password reset email. To do that, we would have some sort of other function that says update password. And if I go back to our auth manager, we can create another function called update password. Try await off. I'm going to move fast here because this is low priority stuff. All right. The update password function is updating a authenticated user's password. So first you need the authenticated user in your app. So first let's get that user. We'll say guard let user equals auth.auth.current user. This is the data, this is their authenticated user, and we'll say else. We don't have that. If we don't have a current user, obviously we can't update the current user's password. So we'll just throw an error back to the application. Again, you should be using your custom errors in production probably. If we have this user, we can then call update password. We're gonna look for the asynchronous one, and then we're gonna pass in a new, so their new password, we would pass that in here of type string, and then pass that in just like that. This function is asynchronous and throws. Here, we're gonna have to try await the result. While we're here, let's create another function called update email. So this is if the user's already signed in, they want to change their email. We can change it here. It's very simple. Update email to, and we'll say email. All right, now we can call both of these from our app. I'm going to go back to the settings view, update password. Let's create our functions in our view model here. Func update email, try await, auth manager, share update email. This is asynchronous and bros. I guess we need a new email here. Let's create a fake email for now. We'll just say hello123@gmail.com. And we'll pass that in. And then we'll say func update password. Async throws. We'll say try await, auth manager, shared update password. And let's just say let password equals. I'm just going to change my password to hello123. All right, and let's pass that in here. Normally, obviously, we want to pass these values into the function, and we should have some UI in our app, maybe like we did on the sign in email view, where there is a publish variable and the user is going to have a text field and they type in their new email or they type in their new password, and then we do validation on that email. But I'm not going to deal with all that because it's just a waste of time right now. We're just going to make sure that these work by clicking buttons. Let's come down here, reset password, done. Update password. We're just going to call viewModel.updatePassword. Password. And we're going to do one more. Say update email, viewModel.update email. Let's just change these so we get the word updated and then email updated. Let's run this real quick. So now we have the ability to update password and update email. So first let's start with update password. And I'm going to click it and I get this printout here that says, this operation is sensitive and requires a recent authentication. This is actually a safety measure for us and we want this, right? We don't want some random person to open this user's phone, click reset password or change password, and then it just changes. And maybe the user then never has access to their account again because they got hacked. So this is saying is we're only going to let them reset their password if they recently authenticated. And so what I'm going to do is actually log out and then log back in. Where's it at testing.com, sign in, and then I'm going to update the password. And you can see that I got a printout now. Password was updated because I recently logged in. So if you're going to do that obviously you don't want to log them out and have them sign back in. You should have some sort of intermediate screen that says, in order to update your password, you first need to sign back into your account or sign in again, sign them in. And then another screen would appear that says, okay, what is the new password that you want? And then you run this function. And same thing with update email. You need a recent authentication. I just did it obviously in the same session. So email updated worked successfully. If I go back to my Firebase console, my previous email was hello2@testing, and we can see that the console even updated to hello123@gmail.com, which is exactly what we put into that function. So if I log out now and I log back in, I got to use the new updated email and updated password for this account, hello123@gmail.com. And what was the password that we did? Hello123. And we're back in. Awesome, guys. That is it for email. We now have the ability to log in, log out, reset email, password, stuff like that. Before we end this video, let's just extract these buttons into an email section so we don't get confused with all the other authentication methods that we're going to do. I'm just going to cut these. Let's create a section with a header, paste them into the section, and the header is just going to be a text that says email functions. All right, I'm going to take this section here, I'm going to cut it and just move it down here. Let's create an extension for settings view just to keep our screen clean. And this will be a private var. We'll call this email section of type some view. Paste that in. Put our email section on the screen here. Run our app. We should get that nice UI from the list with the section header now. Awesome. And I think we are ready to now move on to other authentication methods. This was probably the most difficult one because there's all these dealing with the passwords. A big benefit of the other auth methods, like sign in with Apple, sign in with Google, is that we don't have to deal with the user's password, because if the user has a problem with their Gmail password, Google's going to do that on their side and we don't have to deal with it. So oftentimes I prefer not to do sign in with email and password and just do Google, Apple, or anonymous. But of course, now you guys know how to do it, and I will see you in the next video.